So I think we're all well aware of the hypocrisy and straight up irony that goes on within Disney, and especially within the Lucasfilm part of Disney. The Pedro Pascal and Gina Carano situation is a prime example of that. Gina Carano was fired for simply speaking her mind, for simply exercising her right to freedom of speech on Twitter, and Pedro Pascal is able to tweet this very moronic, very idiotic, pretty extremist things on Twitter, and nothing happens to him. Nothing at all. I'm sure that nothing even happens behind closed doors. Like Gina Carano said that she was talked to multiple times behind closed doors and told that if she didn't stop tweeting these things, if she didn't stop speaking her mind, exercising her right to freedom of speech on Twitter, then she would be fired. And Gina chose to continue to tweet, to continue to speak her mind on Twitter, even though she knew that it might get her fired, and it ended up getting her fired. Pedro Pascal, though, able to tweet whatever he wants to tweet, obviously, and probably never I don't know for sure. Obviously, no one knows what's going on within Disney behind closed doors. But I would assume that Pedro Pascal is not getting anyone talking to him, telling him to stop, because if he was, he would have either been fired by now or he would have had to stop. And he's not stopping. He's getting worse and worse as time goes on. This one's not even that political. And as you can see right here, this one from Screen Geek says Pedro Pascal facing backlash over Kyle Rittenhouse tweet. We're not going to get into the politics of it. We're not going to get into the guilty, not guilty, self-defense, not self-defense stuff. I don't feel like talking about that on this channel. But let's just get into what Pedro Pascal, who obviously plays the Mandalorian, if you don't know, he is Din Djarin in the Mandalorian. This isn't even about the verdict of the case. This isn't even about politics or anything like that, even though we know it is. We know what he's really trying to say here, but just what he tweeted is so stupid. He would be better off just saying that the verdict was wrong on the case rather than saying something like this, because this is just idiotic. This is just moronic and honestly hypocritical if you think about the company that he works for. Right here, it's crazy to me that he thinks that he can tweet this and not get major backlash, and honestly it's crazy that he can tweet something like this and not get talked to by Disney. But really, if Gina Carano, if that precedent is already set where if you tweet something that people don't like, or if you tweet something that's technically wrong, I guess if you could say that Gina Carano's tweets were wrong from a certain point of view, I guess they are wrong if you totally disagree with what Gina Carano was saying. But I think that from whatever point of view you're looking at this from, no matter what side of politics you're on, if you're a logical thinker, you can tell that this tweet is just not a good tweet. It's not a good look for Disney. It's not a good look for Pedro Pascal. Let's check out some of the replies from this tweet from Pedro Pascal. This one says, "This is such a strange tweet. You're memorializing two guys who died because they were actively attacking a young man, yet someone in your industry is recklessly killed on a film set and you tweet nothing, or did I miss that?" That's true. I don't think I saw anything from Pedro Pascal whenever that accident happened. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I also have to kind of watch what I say. So whenever this word comes up right here, which it does come up quite a lot, I'm not going to be able to say it for obvious reasons. So I'm just going to say R or something like that. But let's get on with these other replies. This one from another blue check mark. I don't know who that is, but it's a blue check mark. "Neither were murdered. Both were aggressors in this situation who happen to have a long history of violence, including," for the guy on the left, "Child R. Pick a better heroes." That's true. It's pretty stupid. I know why he tweeted this and I know what he's trying to say, but I think that instead of being discreet about it, instead of, going through the back door to try to say what he's trying to say here, to try to say what so many other blue check marks on Twitter have said, just straight up say it. It's a lot better than saying rest in peace to these two people who are, done terrible things to children and stuff like that. It's really bad. It's a really bad look, not only for Pedro Pascal, but also for Disney and for Lucasfilm and for The Mandalorian. It's just bad, dude. You can't tweet stuff like this and expect to have no repercussions. But the funny thing is, he can tweet stuff like this and expect to have no repercussions because he is, and he does, and he will in the future as well. But Gina Carano says something that's not even close to anything like this. Gina Carano would never say rest in peace to this child artist. You know what I'm trying to say? I can't say the word, but she would never say something like that. But Pedro Pascal can say it because he has a certain political view. It's absolutely ridiculous, man. It's getting frustrating at this point, and it's getting to the point where I don't know how much longer I can support Star Wars, especially Star Wars with Pedro Pascal in it, because how can I support a company who supports people who say rest in peace to people who do those things to children? It's so insane to me. But I guess if you think about the company that Disney is, it would make sense that they would support these two as well. Here's a tweet from the Hodge twins saying, "One of them are children are liberals. That's stupid." This one from Vito is actually pretty funny. This reply says, "Just don't leave them alone with Baby Yoda." And then he has a couple of screenshots where it shows their charges and stuff like that. This one from Seth Dillon says, "You just publicly honored a guy who R'd young children and tried to murder a teenager." It's just crazy, man. It's just so crazy crazy that he can tweet stuff like this. And then we have people like Giancarlo Esposito, who I know don't agree with Gina Carano. I know that he doesn't have the same politics as Gina Carano. I know that for a fact. And he comes out and says that Gina Carano was his favorite co-star on the show. Who is coming out and saying that about Pedro Pascal? The only person who I've ever heard come out and talk positively about Pedro Pascal, ironically enough, this whole situation is just so hypocritical, so ironic. But the only person who I've ever heard come out and talk positively about working with Pedro Pascal on the set of The Mandalorian has been Gina Carano, the person who disagrees with him the most. And to give Pedro his credit, he has talked positively about Gina as well. They said that they kind of came to an agreement on the set as friends. You know, they actually became friends, that they just disagree politically, and that they were going to look past that to try to make a good show, to try to have good scenes together, and ultimately to have a good friendship. And they ended up having a friendship, which is pretty crazy considering the type of person that Pedro Pascal is. He tweets very, very extremist things, and this isn't even extremist for a certain point of view. I mean, we know, like I said, we know what he's trying to say here with this tweet, but it's just the tweet. Even if he's not trying to say anything, even if it's not a political tweet, which it is, we know what it is, but I'm trying to say is this tweet in a vacuum is just a horrible tweet, because these people did very bad things to children, and everyone knows this. And if Pedro Pascal doesn't know that, then you should be paying attention closer to the case, because you can't be making political statements like this, like you're making with this picture, with this tweet right here, and not know the details about who these people are. How are you going to tweet something like this and not know the details? So ignorance isn't really an excuse here. But also, if he's not ignorant, it's still an absolutely awful tweet. It's even worse if you know what these people have done and you're still going to memorialize them like this. You're still going to make them out to be these heroes. It's absolutely disgusting. Like I said, horrible look for Disney, horrible look for Pedro Pascal, a horrible look for The Mandalorian. Like I said, I don't know how much longer I can continue to support Star Wars, especially Star Wars with Pedro Pascal in it. Because I'm not going to punish, everything that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni do simply because they have one lunatic that's acting in one of their shows. I don't know if he was this bad before he was on The Mandalorian, or if this is a more recent thing. I assume that it's some sort of Trump derangement syndrome, and I don't know how the years line up there with when he was cast in The Mandalorian and stuff like that. But if Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni hired Pedro Pascal onto The Mandalorian to be the star of their show, knowing how much of a lunatic he was on Twitter, it's pretty crazy. But I guess, Gina Carano's views have been pretty strong on Twitter as well, and they hired her, so maybe they just don't care about what happens on social media, which should be the way. I think that Pedro Pascal should totally be allowed to say all these idiotic, moronic things on Twitter that he wants to say, but I also think that Gina Carano should have the freedom to say whatever she wants to say on Twitter as well and not be fired. Or if you're going to fire Gina Carano for simply speaking her mind, saying some things that aren't too popular socially, I think that you should definitely fire Pedro Pascal for memorializing and making these really bad people out to be heroes. I think that you should that's definitely a fireable offense if we already have the precedent set when Gina Carano was fired for doing something not even close to as bad as this. But let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. What do you think about Pedro Pascal's tweets? What do you think about the replies? All that stuff. What do you think about what this says about Gina Carano's firing? Let me know what you think about the whole thing in the comments. If you did enjoy this video though, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter, the links are in the description as well. Thank you for watching the video. Hope to see you in the next one.